Hey folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for a vintage edition of my content. With the Vintage Eternal Weekend coming up this weekend, I figured it was time to dip my feet back into vintage for a video or two. Doing this in preparation for the podcast, I want to make sure I can say a few intelligent things about shops, and I haven't played in a while. So it looks like the most popular version of shops right now is what's being referred to as Golos shops. And when Golos ETBs, you get to search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So by vintage standards, the things that you're most frequently going to be getting are things that produce a large amounts of mana. And that's Mishra's Workshop, which consistently produces 3 mana for artifact spells, and Tolarian Academy, which taps for 1 for each artifact you control. Mishra's Workshop is going to be a very consistent mana producer, but notably there are a couple of Planeswalkers in this deck list, and they are not technically artifacts, even though they are colorless. Although there are other options that you can get. This deck plays the full play set of both Wasteland and Ghost Quarter, in addition to 1 Strip Mine. So there is a very large land destruction element going on here. And there are some interesting silver bullets here of Caracas to answer opposing creatures that maybe get put in off, I don't know, an Oath of Druids or something like that. And Tabernacle, which can be used to stop go wide strategies like Mentor. I guess you could also tutor up an Inventor's Fair, but I think a lot of the time you're going to have better options. Inventor's Fair can be converted into a different card, which is nice, but an issue that I immediately see is that if you're reliant on Workshop for your mana, you can't use this to go and activate something like Inventor's Fair. As far as the rest of the deck list goes, I found out you only get to play 1 Karn Great Creator in Vintage. Apparently, it's even better in Vintage than it is in Legacy because of all the artifact mana everyone's playing. That makes a lot of sense. So the deck has a lot of lock pieces, most of them at CMC2. Then you also have the Trinisphere. But a lot of your lock pieces are restricted because of how good Mishra's Workshop is at powering them out. So we have a lot of mana acceleration, and you're hoping to play large-ish threats after dropping a lock piece. You're probably looking to play one of these cards, preferably not Revoker, on turn 1, and then following it up with one of the things over here. Stonecoil's Serpent might look kind of weird, but it's a very nice scaling threat. You know, it could be a turn 1 3/3 if that's something that you wanted to do. In late game, it's a big. Like you don't even count it. You can probably funnel a ton of mana into that sucker. Yeah. God Pharaoh statue is a card that I didn't know until I saw it show up in a vintage deck list. Spells your opponents cast cost 2 more to cast, and at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life. So this is very potent if it's stacking up with other sphere effects, and this is a relatively easy turn 2 play. Like if you have something like a Workshop, Soul Land, and then 1 other mana producer, you can do that. And turn 1 is actually even possible. Even easy on the Lotus hands where you have like Lotus Workshop 6-drop, and that's just the thing that you're allowed to do. The sideboard is relatively pointed. It's a lot of graveyard hate and a lot of null rods. So we have the 4 null rod effects, we have the 4 ley lines, and then there's a Bojuka Bog and a Crypt and a Grafdigger's Cage in addition to that. The Silent Arbiter here stands out to me as a bit of an oddball choice. No more than 1 creature can attack each combat, no more than 1 creature can block each combat, but presumably that's a tutor target for mentor type matchups. Looking at the deck list, that's the card that I immediately want to pull out of it, but I haven't played Vintage in a long time, especially not seriously, so I'm not going to mess with the deck list until after I've played with it. Alright, see how this goes.